They know, Jane. They know, Mick said with a sigh. I looked back at our friends who were left behind. Party's over. Go home. I turned around to do something to Mick. Whether I hit him or yelled at him, I didn't know. It was already too late. Jane's father ran his finger over his face, and her mother led the children down the hall to their bedrooms. Jane sat on the couch with her head resting on her hands. I could hear her sobbing. I felt a deep sadness. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest, and I felt like I couldn't catch my breath. I stood and looked at what was happening around me. The sadness was replaced by an anger that I had never felt before, or at least so long ago that I no longer remembered. I started walking towards Mick and Jane's father. He saw me and started walking towards me. When he got about halfway to me, he finally spoke to me. "I'm sorry." That was all Mick had time to say before I lunged forward with all my might and smashed my fist right into his nose. He fell backwards onto Jane's father, and they both collapsed to the floor. "Oh my God, Ronnie!" my wife screamed. Her father quickly got to his feet for his age. He looked at Mick, who was lying on the floor with his hands covering his nose. "You deserve worse than this, Mick," he said. I was still furious, so I took a few steps and kicked Mick right in the legs. The only sound that could be heard was him struggling for air, pulling his bloody hands up to his crotch. I was somewhat relieved when I saw tears streaming down his face. I don't know how long I stood there, but I seemed to have slipped into another world. As the paramedics tried to give Mick some help, my father-in-law pulled me away. "The police are on their way, Ronnie." "Who called the police?" "The paramedics called on the radio." I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and called the family lawyer. He told me that I would probably be arrested for assault, and that he would meet me at the police station. After that, I called my brother Jack and his wife Jill to come and stay at the house. Hanging up the phone, I looked at my father-in-law. "I want her out of my house by the time I get my bail on Monday." "What about the kids, Ron?" "What about them, Tom?" "My brother and his wife are coming over to take care of them right now." Shortly after that, I was arrested for assault. Strip searches and prostate checks really knock a man out. You are watched by an officer while you shower and use lice shampoo all over your body. I spent the first few hours in a large cell with 5 other guys. 2 of them were drunk and asleep. The other 2 had gotten into a fight with each other at the bar. They had already calmed down and were joking with each other. They congratulated me and threatened me with a fist when I told them why I was locked up. Early that morning, I was transferred to the county jail. That weekend, I realized that the county jail is like high school. Everyone knows everyone's business, and there are cliques and little groups within. Once word spread around the jail about what I had done to get there, I was on my own. Quite a few cellmates told me, "Good job." My solicitor and my brother visited me on Saturday afternoon. My lawyer met with the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, and got me a great deal. My brother informed me that Jen had packed up and left after my arrest. She arrived in the morning and explained to the kids that she would be staying with the grandparents for a while since Mom and Dad were having problems. It was the middle of Sunday morning when I heard Father Franks's voice from behind my cell door. "You're the last person I thought I'd visit in prison, Ronald." "I never thought I'd end up here in my life either, but none of us can see into the future, can we?" I said, putting the book aside and standing up. We shook hands. "Sit down," I said with a chuckle, making myself comfortable on my bunk. Father Frank sat down next to me. We both stared at the floor for what seemed like several minutes. "Although Jane asked me to try to talk to you about reconciliation, I'm not going to do that with Ronald." "Thank you, Father. I appreciate that. I'm more concerned that a temper tantrum could open a Pandora's box in you. I've seen that before. Father, I'm not going to get into bar fights." "That's good to know. I also don't regret what I did one bit. I have to say that Ronald is bothered by it. Mick ended up having one part of his dignity surgically removed," he said awkwardly. I couldn't help myself and started laughing. I stood up and walked out of my cell and into the hallway leading to the common room. Hello, everyone. The man I beat up for cheating on my wife has had one part of his dignity surgically removed, I said loudly to everyone present. Everyone applauded loudly, and I raised my fist upwards, smiling. I turned and walked back into the cell. Father Franks was looking at me with his mouth ajar. "This experience has definitely changed you, Ronald," Father Franks said. "Yes, Father." I always let her get her way. I let her do everything. I'm not going to live like that anymore. I'm not the man I used to be, and I never will be. Change can be good, Ronald. Just be careful how much you change and how fast you do it. Father, after we pray together, you can tell Jane that I will file for divorce. Ronald, don't you think counseling is the best option? She loves you, and you both have children to think about. Where was her concern for the children when she was having sex with someone who wasn't her husband, and our children were in the other room? Father Franks twitched uncomfortably. "I didn't realize the kids knew about her carelessness," he said. "It wasn't carelessness. It was carelessness, every Tuesday for weeks, maybe months. I didn't know the extent of her cheating, only that she was doing it. I could see that he was upset, not only that two of his parishioners might get divorced, but that he had been lied to. Father Frank and I prayed for my safety and healing. He left, and I went back to reading. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by the guards. I and 5 other boys who had been in a cell together on Friday night were loaded into a prison van and taken to the magistrate's court. It wasn't a long ride, about 10 minutes at most. We were taken into a room and individually chained to a wooden bench. For breakfast, the guard gave each of us a ham and cheese sandwich, a bag of pretzels, a glass of fruit, and a small carton of milk. The 6 of us sat and ate our breakfast, discussing what we would do when we got home. At 8 o'clock, we began to be summoned to court. Time seemed to drag on endlessly as I watched the other 5 people walk ahead of me. Soon, I was the only one left in the room. Finally, the guard opened the door. I got up to leave, but my lawyer walked in instead. "We have a problem, Ronnie," he told me. "What do you mean?" "What's going on?" "The judge is refusing to accept the plea agreement that CPS and I entered into." I sat down on the bench, puzzled. "I was counting on being able to go home today. I guess all this political nonsense will prevent that." My lawyer, crouched on the bench next to me, brought me out of my stupor. "I think it's in your best interest to apologize and repent. If the case goes to the Crown Court, you could get 5 to 7 years in prison. My wife is cheating on me, and I'm the only one left on the losing end." "Yeah, pretty much. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I'm sorry," he told me. "I can't apologize to that bastard. My only regret is that I didn't castrate him. You don't have to mean it. You just have to say it. Is there a new offer?" "Yes," he replied. "Good. So what is it?" He took a deep breath, and I realized I wasn't going to like it. 6 months in prison with 12 months suspended, meaning if you re-offend, you'll serve that time, a £5,000 fine, and 100 hours of community service. "That's it?" "I can do that." "No problem?" "Are you kidding?" he asked with a surprised look on his face. "I didn't have any problems in prison. I'm even very well liked." "That's true. The inmates love what he did to that guy. They don't bother him at all," the guard standing at the door said loudly. "I can't believe what I'm hearing, Ronald." "I realize what Ian did was horrible, but you've become a completely different person. What happened to you?" "As soon as I divorce Jen, I'm going to write a book about life in prison and what happened. My publisher will be thrilled." My attorney and I were called out of the room and led into the courtroom. As I entered through a side door, I saw my brother Jack and sister-in-law Jill sitting in the front row at our table. In the next row behind them sat Jane and her parents. Next to Jane sat Father Franks. I was surprised to see Mary and her parents sitting behind them. The judge came in and called everyone to order. The CPS attorney was trying to get him to accept a deal that everyone had already agreed to. The justice of the peace immediately rejected the attempt and said, "I fully understand the circumstances of the attack. The perpetrator learned horrible and disgusting news that no husband should ever have to hear, and to hear it from his own children during a party with guests is just awful." He was interrupted by Jane's crying, as the judge banged his gavel and ordered silence in the courtroom. I looked over and saw Jana sobbing, tucked into her mother's shoulder. He continued, "I know Mr. Williams was in shock and out of his mind when he attacked Mr. McMullen." "Exactly so, sir," my lawyer said. "However, I cannot ignore the fact that Mr. Williams caused Mr. McMullen grievous bodily harm that resulted in him having to have a testicle surgically removed." I couldn't keep from laughing lightly and quickly covered my mouth with my hands. I wasn't the only one laughing. I could hear my brother and Jill laughing. "Mr. Williams, please stand up," the judge ordered. My lawyer and I stood up. "Mr. Williams, I order you to spend 6 months in jail. The additional 12 months, I impose probation, meaning that if you commit any crime, you will serve that time. I impose a fine of £5,000, as well as 100 hours of community service." He banged his gavel and walked away, and Ian sobbed loudly. "I'm so sorry, Ronnie. I ruined our lives." I turned and hugged my brother and Jill, then looked at Ian. "Sign the papers when they come, Jan," I told her, and she walked out the side door crying. The 6 months in prison passed very slowly. Every day I read and exercised. Push-ups, squats, wall squats, and burpees in my cell. We were allowed to go outside for 1 hour a day. 45 minutes of that, I spent jogging around the perimeter. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I could use the bench press, dumbbells, and squat machine in the yard. I wrote down in a journal everything that happened each day. The people I met, what brought them to prison, what they hoped was waiting for them when they got out. Some ended up there because of unfortunate circumstances, some because of bad choices, some because they were just plain mean and bad people. I had the opportunity to see and hear the perspectives of people of different races and religions. They all willingly shared not only their stories, but also what they would have done if they were in my situation. Every Saturday, either my brother or my sister-in-law brought their children to me. At the time, they didn't quite understand what was going on. They told me that their mom cried all the time, that her parents, my brother and Sil, often came to see me. Sometimes they would scream. They told me that they loved and missed me. It was nice to hear, but hard at the same time. My brother told me that Mary ended up slapping Jane in the grocery store. She also had a hard time finding people to talk to. Our friends shunned her. Even at church, no one wanted to sit next to her or even talk to her. During Sunday visits, Father Franks would talk to me about her problems in the community. He talked to me about forgiveness. If people saw that I had forgiven her, perhaps they would be more open to accepting her back. "Father, I will never forgive her for what she did to our family." Colossians 3:12-13. "As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive," he replied. Galatians 6:8. "Whoever sows to please his sinful nature will reap destruction from that nature," I answered him. Father Franks frowned. "Is there any hope at all? Divorce is terribly damaging to children. Do you not think of them at all?" "Did she think of our children when she slept with our neighbor?" "You accuse me of not thinking of the children or being a bad father one more time, and you'll find out how much I've changed," shouted I to him. "Oh!" Franks looked at me in amazement. Before he could say anything, a cellmate named Tony came to my cell door. "A few people are going to go practice on the mats. Are you coming?" he said, cocking his head at me. "Sure," I replied, catching him. "Are you fighting already, Ronald?" Father Franks asked in surprise. "Actually, it's just rolls and sparring," I replied, standing up. "He's actually very good, Father, like a fish in water," Tony said, smiling. I stood up and walked over to Tony and we exchanged fists. I looked at Frank's father. "Tell Jane to sign the divorce papers. I know she has them." When the divorce was 30 days away, the lawyer came to see me. On the table in front of him was a manila envelope. "Did she sign these?" I asked. "No, this is a counteroffer that she and her lawyer came up with." "A counteroffer?" "Indeed. She's tricking me into thinking she has something to fall back on." "I really think you should look into this," he told me. "Who do you work for, me or her?" I asked him. "I work for you, and I'm telling you to look at those damn papers, Ronald." Sighing, I unzipped the zipper and dumped the contents on the table. Inside was a trial separation agreement and a handwritten note from Jane. I took the separation agreement and ripped it to shreds. "There will be no trial. She's already had sex with me for an unknown amount of time. Tell her to sign the divorce papers. I don't want anything to do with her except our children. Now do it." The weekend before I was supposed to be released, my lawyer and brother came to see me. We all shook hands. The guards don't allow hugs, not even from relatives. "So, did she sign the papers?" I asked the lawyer as we sat down at the table. "No, she didn't sign," the lawyer replied. "What's the damn delay?" I asked. "She asked the judge to schedule marriage counseling," he replied. "There's no way this nightmare is going to end," I said, rubbing my face. "Look, Ronnie, Jen is in bad shape. She barely eats and drinks a couple bottles of wine a week," my brother interjected. "Are you taking her side now, Jack?" "Absolutely not, Ronnie. You know better, but kids need a mother," he replied. "She made her bed, Jack. Actions have consequences. Stop blaming me for what she decided to do. If she drinks, it's her fault." "I'm not blaming you at all, Ronnie. I'm not even telling you to forgive her. But you need to talk to her. Tell her both that when she signs the divorce papers, that's when I'll talk to her," I told my brother and the lawyer. After that, we moved on to what was going to happen on the day of my release. Since I was being released on Friday afternoon, it was decided that I would spend the first weekend at home with Lily and Tommy. Jane would go to her parents. Jack told me that by the time I returned, the kids had already planned everything they wanted to do. I missed them very much. All Friday morning, my cellmates hugged me and wished me well. Some of them gave me their phone numbers or relatives' numbers, asking me to keep in touch with them. I was released just before lunchtime, so I had to eat breakfast in prison. The cook made me a special omelet instead of the usual powdered eggs. It was a very touching gesture. A few days before, Jack had brought me a change of clothes to wear when I was released. I walked out the front door of the prison at 11:15 a.m. on a typically warm and sunny fall day. I saw him waiting for me and a limo with a driver standing next to him. "Why did you take the limo?" I asked as we hugged each other. Asked me as we hugged each other. Asked me as we hugged each other. The driver opened the door. I ducked down and climbed in. When I looked up to sit in the back, my children, Lily and Tommy, and my sister-in-law, Jill, were already in the seats. No sooner had I gotten into the far back seat that both of my children rushed into my arms. There were tight hugs, tears of joy, and lots of "I missed you" and "I love you" words. At some point, Jack climbed in, sat next to Jill, and we touched down. "What's the plan, guys?" I asked as my kids sat down on either side of me. "We have reservations at Angelina's for lunch. Then you need to sign some papers at the lawyer's office. Afterward, we'll take the kids to Wacky Warehouse so the three of us can go over some things," Jill replied. "Angelina's is an upscale Mediterranean restaurant. It took me a few minutes to get used to this quiet. The prison is very noisy. A lot of talking, yelling, just a lot of noise. After 6 months of prison food, I didn't want to overload my body, so I had a salad of chicken, tomatoes, cucumbers, and white beans for lunch." Lily and Tommy continued to talk about all the things they had accomplished over the summer and early fall. We had a delicious lunch and headed back to the limo. On the way to my attorney's office, Tommy talked about the beginning of his first year of elementary school. He talked about his teacher and the new kids he met. Lily kept saying that she couldn't wait for the next year to start. At the lawyer's office, I had to sign some papers. Although alcohol had nothing to do with what I had done, I could not take alcohol or drugs for the duration of my probation. It wasn't that hard to do, though. I rarely drank, and the few times I did, It was during a soccer game or a glass of wine at a nice dinner. I ended up getting in touch via video link with my publisher. She really liked the idea of my book. I published mainly on various online news sites, where I covered everything from sports to crime to mainstream news. She told me that there was a significant market for true crime and drama. She informed me that my case was being covered all over the country. Of course, I didn't know that since I was in prison. Afterward, it was nice to see the kids having fun at the oddball warehouse. I was really hoping they would run out of steam. I couldn't wait to sleep in a real bed with everything I needed to roll around in. We'd been sitting, watching the kids play and discussing the meeting with my lawyer for half an hour when my brother changed the subject. "I think it's time you got some good news, Ronald," Jack said. "Okay, spill it." "Mick and Mary's divorce is almost finalized. She took it to the cleaners, got everything. The house here in Cardiff, she got half of his SIPP, self-invested personal pension, and he has to pay alimony," he told me. "Good for her. I hope he ends up living as a lonely, penniless sack of shit," I replied. In the end, he managed to keep his new job in Manchester. He had to stonewall for a long time, and they made him sign what was essentially a behavior contract, told Jill. "Do you think Jane will follow him there after the divorce?" I asked. "Of course not. She loves you, Ronnie," replied Jill. "Did she love me when she had sex with Mick?" Jill sighed heavily, but I answered before she could respond. "Our kids were in the next room while she slept with him. Don't tell me she loves me or this family, Jill. If she was on the other foot, you wouldn't even be talking to me today. Equal treatment, right?" "She made a mistake, Ronnie. Everyone makes mistakes. She made the same mistake over and over and over and over, but for some reason, you and others want to make me out to be the bad guy." "No one thinks you're the bad guy, Ronnie, I promise. The only thing people have a problem with is your refusal to even talk to Jane," Jill replied. "That's 100% a lie. I've said many times that I'll talk to her as soon as she signs the divorce papers." "I told you so," Jack said to his wife. After a few minutes of silence, we started talking about how my brother and sister-in-law were doing. They talked about how the city officials had repainted all the fire hydrants in our neighborhood. We all talked about the upcoming Christmas play at church. We talked about it for about another hour before the kids came back to the table and said they wanted to go home and show me their new rooms. We loaded into the limo and headed home. On the way back, the kids were very talkative. They talked about the slides, ball pits, and games they played at Wacky Warehouse. It was nice to see and know that they were having fun. The whole thing reminded me a bit of a prison in its noisiness. There was constantly something going on in there. We turned the corner, and for the first time since I'd been in prison, I was nervous about going home. Would it look the same? Would it feel the same? How would I react walking into the room that used to be considered our bedroom? It was probably evident on my face. "It's going to be okay, Ronnie," I heard my brother say. We stopped in front of the house. It looked the same from the outside, only the bushes were taller than before. Other than that, it looked pretty good. The kids ran ahead of me and straight into the house. I stopped in front of the open door. How much time passed? I don't remember. I only know that Jack and Jill were at my back when the kids grabbed my hands and pulled me inside. I saw that the entrance to the house was the same. As I was dragged into the kitchen, I noticed it had changed. Instead of the modern gray walls, steel appliances, and glass dining table that Jane liked so much, there were light brown walls, black appliances, and dark walnut cabinets. A new kitchen table stood in tone with the walls. The walls around the table were hung with pictures of Jane and the kids and me. Pictures of us grilling kebabs in the backyard. Pictures of us at restaurants. All pictures were of food. Looking at them reminded me of some of those moments. Those were good times. I felt the kids sit me down in a chair and saw that there were pizza coupons on the table. The kids wanted to order pizza and watch some Disney movies on their streaming channel. I looked at Jack and Jill and said, "Regular prison food, straight-up pizza. This will be good." The three of us laughed, and the kids, not getting the joke, argued about what kind of pizza to order and where to get it. When the kids finally agreed on pizza, Jill put the order on hold for later. I started walking around the house. The front room had changed, too. The walls were brown, too, but a few tones darker than the kitchen. The furniture had been replaced. There was now a cream-colored couch and 2 armchairs with a large coffee table around it to match the color of the walls. There were probably about 100 pictures of our family hanging on the walls. Pictures of the kids as babies, pictures of us on vacation, various vacations, and other family events. On every wall in the room hung a large picture of our wedding. I looked at the pictures and remembered all the events. I understood what the hell she was doing, and I didn't like it either. "Yeah, she's going a little overboard with the pictures," my brother said, standing next to me. "She's trying to whitewash what she did and imprint in our kids' brains that she was always a loving wife," I told him. "No, she's not trying to. She just wants to show you that you both can start your relationship over and still be a family," Jill said from the kitchen archway. "Do you know what that proves, Jill?" I asked. "What exactly, Ronald?" she replied. "All it proves is that she thinks our marriage and our children's lives are nothing more than a game she's trying to win, and that she doesn't mind using dirty, manipulative tactics to get her way with no regard for my feelings or the welfare of her own children." Jill just stood there with her mouth open, unable to say anything else, and Jack just laughed. "Why are you defending Jane so zealously? Is that a conscience thing? Are you projecting?" "I never cheated on my husband. Don't look for problems where there aren't any, Ronald," Jill replied. "Then what the hell is your problem, Jill?" The rather tense conversation was interrupted by the doorbell ringing. "Saved by the bell, little brother," Jack said with a chuckle as Jill went to answer the door. "Why is that?" I asked, sitting down on the couch. "Listen, Ronnie, believe it or not, Jill is actually on your side." "Well, I don't think so," I replied. "Jill loves you both. She believes in the one-and-done principle when it comes to cheating. She also believes in forgiveness and that sometimes people make mistakes." Engrossed in my conversation with my brother, I didn't notice Jill standing in the entryway with Janie. Janie was dressed modestly, which surprised me. She was wearing blue jeans with an orange top and black shoes. I saw something that made me smile. "I'm glad I can still make you smile," she said with a smirk. "I'm smiling because you have divorce papers in your hand," I replied. "Oh," she replied, frowning. "Why are you here, Jane?" "I thought I was going to be alone with the kids until tomorrow," I asked, sitting down at the table. I looked up and saw Jack staring intently at Jill. He was angrier than I was at this development. This stunt wasn't a surprise to me. I had guessed something like this was going to happen. I just sat quietly and waited for someone to speak. The silence was broken by Jill turning to Ian. "That's where my help ends, sis. Jack and I are going to go watch TV in the front room while you two talk. Good luck." I watched them hug, and then Jill waved for my brother Jack to follow her. I saw him gritting his teeth as he walked towards her. I grinned to myself. When they got home, she was going to get one hell of an ass whipping. As soon as they came out of the kitchen, Jane sat down at the table across from me. We stared at each other, evaluated each other. We both knew what we wanted from each other, and so far neither of us had sagged one bit. "You like what I've done to the house? Going overboard with the paintings. Did you sign the papers?" She handed me an envelope across the table. I opened it and flipped through the many pages. Sure enough, she'd initialed and signed everything. "Great. You have Jane's word. First of all, I am so sorry that I have caused you so much pain, heartache, and embarrassment. I had the perfect marriage and I gave it all up. You didn't deserve any of it. You should know that you had absolutely nothing to do with it." "I know I didn't. It's all about you and the fact that you're a lying, cheating, selfish bitch who doesn't think about anyone but herself." I could see that those words hurt her, and it made me feel a little better and happier. "I deserve it. And you're right in every word." "Okay, then we're done," I said, hoping to end this sooner rather than later. No, we're not done. You said if I signed the papers, we'd talk, and I've been waiting a long time for that, Jane replied curtly. I stood up and walked over to the stove and turned it on. When the kettle boils, I won't care if you finish your speech or not. Jane stood up, took the kettle off the stove, and set it beside her at the table. Now listen to me, Ronnie. I understand and accept that our marriage is over. I know it's entirely my fault. I know you have a lot of questions, and I'm going to tell you the truth about everything. No, Jane, I don't want to. I don't care why you did it. The only thing I care about is that our children know the truth and that I love them. I love them too, Ronald. Of course you do. You've taught our children that it's okay to lie. It's okay to cheat. It's okay to cover up. I have to deprogram our children and at the same time keep them from seeing how much I want you to experience endless pain and agony, I replied loudly. Do you really hate me that much, Ronnie? Is there really no forgiveness anywhere? The only thing I forgive is myself. I forgive myself for falling in love with someone as vile as you. I forgive myself for letting you walk all over me. Tears rolled down her face. I had once comforted her, but now it was hard for me to even look at her. Maybe someday, in the distant future, I'll forgive you, but don't hold your breath. Jane wiped her eyes and face with her hands. Tomorrow I'll move my things to the guest room. No way. I will never sleep in what used to be our room. You've polluted it. I have to stay here on parole and probation until the divorce is final. So I'm going to try to be as civil to you as possible in front of the kids. I'm going to use these months to prove to you that I've learned from my mistakes. We can use this opportunity to start over, something new, something better, Ronnie. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Looking out the kitchen window, I saw it was the pizza delivery guy. I opened the door and paid for dinner. When I returned to the kitchen, Jane was gone. Jack and Jill were just entering the kitchen with the kids when Jen appeared from the back room. The kids ran to hug her. Are you staying to eat pizza with us? Lily asked. Jane threw a quick glance at me. No, honey, I'm not staying. I have to go back to my grandparents' house. They still need help, but I'll be back tomorrow. Lily, you forgot to wash your hands, my son Tommy suddenly spoke up. Lily ran down the hall. As soon as she was out of sight, Tommy looked at Jane. Are we going to have to move when you and Daddy get divorced? Jane gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. I crouched down and got on the same level as my son. No, son. When we get divorced, I'll move. But you and Lily can talk to me any time. Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands too, Tommy said, and left to join his sister in the bathroom. Sit down and have a snack before you go outside, I said to Jane, who was shocked. Instead, crying, she ran out of the house. Jill tried to follow her, but Jack grabbed her arm. Don't stick your nose any deeper, he told her. Lily asked where her mom had gone, but it was quickly forgotten as everyone sat around eating pizza and watching movies. It was already 7 o'clock when Jack and Jill decided to leave, and for the first time in a long time, we were left with just the kids. Bath time had changed since I was in prison. Lily was still taking a bath, and Tommy was already well into the shower. I read them a story and put them to bed at 8:30. The kids were already asleep and snoring like bear cubs when I checked on them at 8:45. After that, I turned off the TV and the lights. I sat in the dark, just enjoying the peace and the fact that I was home now. No talking, no plotting, no tears, no guards walking by every half hour. Just total peace and quiet. When I woke up, I saw that it was a little after 5 o'clock in the morning. I had slept for over 8 hours straight. That hadn't happened since I'd been in prison. The silence I had enjoyed before going to sleep seemed to penetrate my soul. Curiosity took over, and I finally went to where my bedroom used to be. As I opened the door and turned on the light, I was both surprised and unsurprised to see that it was now completely different. The walls and carpet had turned maroon. The ceiling was no longer bright white, but thinner and darker. Taking a few steps inside, I noticed that our closet now had glass sliding doors. Just as I was about to turn around to turn off the light, my phone beeped. I saw that it was a message from Mary, Mick's ex or future wife, I couldn't remember. "I'm at the front door. Let me in. It's cold outside." I quickly walked to the front door and opened it. She was wearing a long, light brown coat that reached her ankles. "Come in, Mary. What are you doing up this early?" "Thank you," she said, stepping inside. "Can I take your coat?" I asked. "Sure." She undid the buttons, unbuttoned the coat, and before me stood the first naked woman I'd seen in more than 6 months. I took a step back, smiling. The only thing she was wearing was a pair of pink bunny slippers. It was a nice distraction. I never realized she'd be naked underneath them. "Wow, Mary, you're even more beautiful than I imagined in my fantasies." She let her coat fall to the floor. They spent 5 days together having sex. So for the next 50 days, we're going to do it until we can't move. We're going to punish them 10 times harder, she said, stepping toward me. I pulled her to me and kissed her. "How about we start with step 2? I picked her up in my arms and threw her over my shoulder. "What the hell?" Jane's scream woke us both up from our slumber. Tears were streaming down her face and she was holding Mary's coat in her hands. Mary got out of bed and walked over to Jane. "I told you 50 days, Jane. This is only the first day." Mary snatched the coat from Jane's hands. I just put my hands behind my head and smiled as I watched Mary put the coat on. "I can't believe you left him for Mick. Ronnie knows how to have sex so much better." She looked back at me, smiling. "Stop by my place tonight." "I was going to do that," Jane said, crying. "All those things you complained about to us women at church, I'll do better than you ever could," Mary said, and walked past her. As I started to get out of bed to go to the shower, Jane threw herself on top of me. "Please don't do this, Ronnie. I'm willing to do anything, even a threesome with her, but please don't leave me out of it. I'm so sorry. I'm more sorry than you can imagine," she said, sobbing heavily. "You're unbelievable," I said, pushing her off me and moving her to the other side of the bed. I stood up naked as a jaybird. "I'm sorry, and changing houses means nothing to me. You cheated on me, betrayed our family. You taught our children to lie and hide from me. If they hadn't blundered, you would have let me be a know-nothing broad for the rest of my God-given life. I never wanted this to happen," she continued to sob. "I hate seeing your face, hearing your voice. This will never, ever happen, Jane. I have not the slightest sympathy for you. I hope the whole town continues to shun you. I hope you live a miserable life after I'm finally gone." "I'll kill myself. I swear to God I will," she said with desperation in her voice. I just left and went into the shower, thinking of all the wonderful and fun things I was going to do to Mary. My divorce from Jane became final after 8 months. She never tried to kill herself. She kept trying to get me to take her back. She treated me better than she ever had before. The night before I left, when my probation ended, I slept with her. I hated sleeping with her all night long. Jane was ecstatic, then crying over and over. The morning I left, we hugged one last time and she watched me drive away from the front door. Mary and I had sex for 50 days straight. By the time we were done, we were both completely exhausted, not only physically, but emotionally. On the last day, she told me that we should both date other people. If we don't have a serious relationship with anyone after 12 months of probation, we can start a serious relationship. Several times I saw her on dates while I had a date. We nodded at each other or waved at each other. We were still friendly and welcoming. Several times we caught each other looking at each other, which led to wide smiles. A week after her probation ended, Mary showed up at my cottage with fish and chips from town. We sat in the backyard and talked about our relationship. Since we'd met, she'd dated 5 guys and only slept with 2 of them. According to her, one of them was worse than Mick, and the other was okay, but too clingy. I told her I had dated 8 women and slept with 5 of them, and she was surprised at that number, but asked how they were doing. I told her the truth. 2 of them were just laying around like logs. 2 of them were regular, nothing special. The other was a firecracker and wanted to accomplish something permanent. She had a hesitant look on her face until I told her that neither of them compared to what he had. Mary smiled broadly and asked if that meant we were serious. A year later, we were married, and I have never been happier and more content in my life.